Okay. All right, we are recording. We're gonna actually adjust our agenda just a little bit today. We're gonna start with the budget because that's the most important thing we're gonna accomplish today. And if we run out of steam at the end, we can always just, send updates after the meeting. As always, we're gonna take questions in the chat. So if questions come up while we're talking, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll do questions at the end of that section. With the budget in particular, the way we're going to approach that today is that I think Pamela is going to share her screen and Jim is going to sort of walk us through section by section. We're not going to necessarily go line item by line item, but we're going to talk about each big section in the budget and kind of give you a summary of what that is. Before we even do that, Mr. G is going to give us like a little brief primer on how the budget process actually works, because at least for me, this was, as a relatively new Richland parent, was kind of a mystery until we went through it. So we'll do a primer, Jim will walk us through the budget, and then we'll save all the questions and discussion for the end of the budget. And then we'll vote. And I have a poll set up that hopefully will work. So if you don't mind, Mr. G, can you just sort of briefly talk us through how this happens?
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. So every year, the budget allocation letters, those are the different budgets we have and the funding that we're going to receive from the district, that gets emailed to us around February. And there's usually about a short turnaround time, usually like 2 to 3 weeks, to take those the dollars, budget them accordingly, take it to SSC, kind of go over the plan with the SSC members, say this is what we want to do to improve our school, and then the SSC votes on it. Then after the SSC votes on it, everything that basically I couldn't fund from our general fund budgets or from the school budgets that I have to work with, I then turn to Booster and I say, hey, Booster, could you please fund these things? It's every year, it seems like I'm asking for a little bit more because every year our budgets are a little bit less and a little bit less. Then Booster presents the budget to all of you. There's a vote, and then once the budget is approved, I then turn to Booster and say, hey, remember those TAs and the orchestra and the different things that you guys approved? I need actual cash. I need checks. I need the funding for that. So when I go to my budget development meeting, which is March 4th, I can turn those in. If we don't submit the actual money to fund the different positions at the budget development time, it really pushes everything back. So like, for example, if we want to hire TAs, or Booster's going to fund some TAs, or Booster's going to fund the orchestra, they will not give us an orchestra teacher unless there's actually money in that fund to pay for the orchestra teacher. They will not allow teachers' assistants to start until the money is actually there to pay for them. So that allows us to open up the position. The longer you wait, the more it pushes back the start time for these different people. So we obviously want them to start first day of school, August 14th, 15th, something like that. So I need those checks like at budget development time. So there's a very tight timeline that we have to follow through. So right now we're at the part where we receive the funding. It's been allocated it. I spoke to SSC. SSC approved it. And now there are some things that I was not able to fund through the district budgets. So now we're asking you guys to see if you guys are willing to fund those things.
Thank you, Mr. G. Okay, so I think now I think Pamela's going to share her screen of the budget, or is that how we're going to do it?
I've got it up on my screen. I think if I have.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, Frank, if you want to do that, Jim.
I should be able to do that. Give me one quick second here. Make sure I'm pulling up the right one.
I was practicing sharing the financial, not the budget. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I got him flipped. Thanks, Pamela.
All right.
All right, Jim.
Can everyone see the 2021-2022 proposed budget?
Yep.
All right. So away we go. So again, as Kate mentioned, I'm just going to sort of talk about the individual categories, just kind of give kind of an overview of what our thinking was behind it, and then obviously we'll open up to questions at the end. So the first item is staff, which we all agreed, especially going at the hopes of going back to school in person next year, that's really going to be a priority. So we prioritized staff, make sure we have enough people on board. Of course, the school coordinator, taking care of Katie and just making sure we have enough bodies in the classrooms, and also with the eye towards getting an art teacher from LAUSD as being something we wanted to be able to cover. The next line item is student benefits, which pretty self-explanatory. Orchestra, and again, as we're opening up. There's somewhere on the TV. Okay, hold on one quick second. So we're prioritizing orchestra, and of course now that we're hoping to be going back to school, we're hoping to be able to add in some art supplies, books, etc. Hey, thanks. No, it's okay. Come sit with me. So then the next item is, with help from a future Richland student, we've got campus improvements, and again, the main item we were selecting for. Thanks, Kate. On campus improvements, we really are looking at the fact that next year, as we return to school, kids love being outside, and being outside is obviously going to be a COVID-friendly way. So we want to make sure we prioritize to have enough budget to make sure that the campus and the garden, which the kids love, is ready to be used, and also a big portion of wanting to be ready for the middle school expansion, which is obviously a big thing in my world as my daughter will be starting next year. Staff appreciation kept it pretty much the same. Miscellaneous, mostly the same, except we did prioritize equipment budget, assuming that there'll still be some equipment needs, especially after a year and a half of distance learning. We realized there is definitely will be equipment needs. And then booster fees mainly staying the same, except trying to maintain a larger reserve fund, just because obviously going back to school with COVID friendly practices may involve some unforeseen items. So we just wanted to make sure we had those reserves to be able to cover anything that came up. And with that, I think ready to just open it up to any questions anyone has.
I just wanted to mention that the equipment line item includes like technology support. So that would be especially helpful if we end up having to do any sort of like hybrid model, or for some students who might be at higher risk who have to continue online learning even after school is open, like laptops, those like document cams, that kind of stuff to support hybrid.
I think I saw Perrine raise her hand on the gallery view.
I did, but I was actually gonna ask about the hybrid model and how the budget was addressing this. So that kind of answered my question. I also was wondering, since there was a big increase on the garden, is it because we're intending to use the garden as part of the equipment, or like is this because some of the classes are going to be outside, or I'm just like trying to balance, because I'm anticipating, and I might be wrong, but there's going to be a lot of budget needs for equipment in like adapting the school for a hybrid model, or like, I don't know how much is covered by LAUSD and is not. So just trying to understand that.
Yes. So with the garden, it used to be actually at 6,000, and this year it was trimmed down when we found out we were going to be remote, because even though we were not on campus, let me make sure I'm not muted. Okay, good. So even though we were not going to be on campus, like the garden still requires maintenance even if the students are not there. So while students were on campus, the garden budget was always 6,000, as you can see from the budget of the year before this one. So we really brought it back to where it's supposed to be. And yes, there is the intention of using the garden more, whether it's in different ways, because it's more COVID friendly. And then so this budget has in mind, obviously, an in-person return. We as boosters don't have an idea what kind of in-person return it's going to be. How much is it going to be hybrid? If maybe we're not hybrid at all, we don't have that visibility. So kind of put, the best assumption given the, the facts that you have today, to allocate the money in the way, you know, that would make sense, basically. I'm sorry, there was another part of your question aside from.
It was about the equipment. So, but that was kind of answered right before. And so when I look at the line right below garden is campus beautification, is that also because part of the, like us adapting the campus to, do you have more details on what the plans are? I'm just asking because it's like we're doubling the expense. I'm trying to, which might be great. I might like.
I mean, yeah, it does go in that same logic of it is an outside space, and like we still don't have, I mean, the details of.
I can also speak to that as well, because I'm sort of helping head the campus beautification. And I can say, Preen, and for anyone who's asking, we don't have anything solid right now, but I'm assuming that as much as we can, based on what LAUSD says, but also I'm assuming based on probably parental wishes, that the more that we can be outside with the kids, the better. But that I know, at least from what Mr. G has said, that even just purchasing picnic tables, because a lot of them have been in better shape in better years. But even those are pretty expensive to purchase one of those for the kids to use outside. So I don't know if we'll end up using that whole budget. But again, what doesn't go towards campus beautification will realistically go towards the middle school expansion as well. So which, and it looks like in the budget is allocated, but again, that's going to be a fairly large expense as we go moving forward.
I think
so there's
just to add on, if I can jump in, just add on. So last year there was a lot of parents wanted the garden to be open and used during recess and lunch to have like a green space for the kids to play in. So if we are looking to do implementing more of that the next year, or when we're back on campus at some point, the more the kids go in the garden, the more the kids play in the garden, they run around the garden, the more abuse the garden takes. So then you're looking at things for like, reseeding the grass, sprinkler heads get kicked and knocked off. So you have to repair certain things. Also, we're looking to make that garden space and the area around that kind of like the sixth grade area, where like maybe the sixth graders next year can have lunch in the garden. It'll be like their little special place. So it kind of makes them feel like special, like we're sixth graders, we're middle school, but we have this our own spot. So we figured we would just put a little extra money into that. And if it doesn't get used, it'll just roll over, or we can reallocate it again. But it's nice to have, not knowing what's going to come up, just to have a little pot of money to go to for the garden and kind of beautifying that area and preparing it for the sixth graders to use.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions in the chat that I think I can answer fairly quickly. On the software licenses, the reason that we didn't actually end up having to pay for a lot of software licenses this past year, because LAUSD covered a lot of software that they normally don't during remote learning. Additionally, the main software license we're anticipating, we actually think that will, Mr. G shared that he thinks that will continue next year, but the main software license that we're anticipating paying for is the Remind app, which is the app that Mr. G uses to text you all reminders. That is free up to a certain number of families, but we have grown to the point that we have crossed the threshold and have to pay for it, and that is the cost for that app. Brian asked, is the assumption that field trips will not happen due to COVID? Is that why that is zero? Unfortunately, yes. But I do want to point out that we took this approach when we were creating it, of like fund what we need to fund, but then don't just like put money in line items for the sake of spending it all. So you'll notice that our reserves for next year is budgeted at $15,000. And that's in part because there's just a lot we don't know. Like if it turns out that halfway through the year that field trips could start, then we as a booster could, decide to reallocate some of the money in reserves to that field trip line item. But since we don't know that right now, we decided it didn't make sense. We would take the approach of funding the things we felt pretty sure could happen, and then not just like spending all the money down to zero, because having savings and being flexible seems like a more successful approach. The next question is, will this art teacher speak French? We have a budgeted for an LAUSD art teacher. We do not hire that teacher, but I would guess Mr. G would prioritize hiring someone who speaks French if possible.
If possible, yes. I don't know if there are any, but if possible, that would be a priority.
That would be a goal. And then in terms of where French learning is, one of the things that we did was significantly add to the book budget. So you'll see that 2 years ago it was $500 and this year it's $1,500. And that was particularly in response to the conversation we had a meeting or two ago about wanting to prioritize adding French books to the library. And French books are quite expensive. So we increased that budget a lot. I don't know if there's anything else anyone wants to add.
And also, yeah, I just wanted to add with the TAs, like the TAs, like they're split between for the French language and English language. So that also goes towards supporting French.
And also for the TAs, because we're going to be reopening, because we're going to need like all hands on deck, we're going to need more people to do, temperature checks, the whole getting onto campus, everything's going to look completely different. So the TAs are really serve multiple purposes. One, they help instruction by being in the classroom with the kids, but they're also extra bodies for supervision during recess and lunch to make sure the kids are socially distanced, to make sure there's like no more than 3 kids at the restroom at one time. And we're going to need to have lots of people stationed at different parts of campus to make sure the kids are indeed being safe and socially distanced. So that's where the TA ask comes from. And I think we're asking for one more TA than in the past. We may not be able to find that person, but it's always good to have additional bodies on campus because especially once we go to hybrid reopen, we're going to need bodies just to make sure kids are being safe and following the appropriate social distance guidelines.
So the next question in the chat I see is from Danielle about how the $10,000 was derived around like the middle school funding. I don't know if there's any, I don't want to speak for everyone all the time, so I'm just reading the chat questions. I can share my memory of that conversation or if anybody else wants to.
I mean, my recollection is that we don't have full clarity around all of the items that we will need to cover, but we wanted to make sure we had at least a significant chunk to be able to make appropriate accommodations to make the middle school successful. But I also, if anyone else has any specific recollections of how we got that exact number.
Yeah, that was my memory as well, Jim. And I think in my mind, $10,000 is probably nowhere near enough to do what folks will eventually want for the middle school. Like that's not going to, put in a soccer field or, address the fact that we don't have a gymnasium. But in prior years, there was no line item at all for middle school expansion. And so, it's not like we had a specific formula to derive $10,000. It just felt like a good chunk of money as a starting point to make a beginning commitment as a boosters to support the needs of middle school.
Exactly. And again, like all the other budgets, nothing says that we aren't going to, if we don't need to spend $10,000, we're not going to spend $10,000. We're just simply making sure that we have resources available. So nothing is already spent on that specific line item.
So the next question, and Mr. G, I think we might need you to help us with this. The 3 LAUSD TAs cost $60,000 approximately. Now it's more like $74,000. Why the increase? I believe that has to do with that 2 of our current TAs are now eligible for benefits. Is that correct, Mr. G?
That is correct. So I believe the 6-hour TA, I believe was 18,000 and change off the top of my head. And then there's another $5,000 in benefits. Once a TA works, I forget the threshold, but once they work at X amount of hours per year, then they earn benefits for the next school year. So both of our TAs they worked full years last year, so they were both entitled to benefits the next school year. So that's an additional $5,000 that we have to budget for. The question, why does Booster have to pay for LAUSD benefits? Because Booster is purchasing the TAs. I can purchase one TA out of my budget, so that's going to pay for their salary plus their benefits. Anything beyond that, if you guys want TAs, it's going to come from Booster. If you guys want orchestra, it's going to come from Booster. There's no more money in my budgets to purchase anything in addition to. Just kind of recap a little bit from my school budgets, I was able to purchase pretty much the entire coordinator position minus the $35,000. I was able to fund 1 TA, 2 supervision aides, and then little things like the cost of a copier and the school librarian, which is district funded, and certain other little things, instructional material, general supplies. And beyond that, there's no more money. We lost about $90,000 in Title I funding that we're never going to get back. So every year we're working at a $90,000 deficit, like right off the bat. So anything else that we're going to want that you see on these lists, it has to be booster funded, or else it just will not happen. We'll have 1 TA next year.
Okay. I see Brad raised his hand, and I know also Michael had a question that it might be easier if Michael, you unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just asking the question on the total budget, and then, you know, particular line items. How is trade-offs kind of determined, right? It seems to me that TAs are probably the most important thing we could possibly fund, as it most directly affects our kids and the interactions with our kids. Are we making hard choices on some of these other line items like we have in the past to directly affect our kids as much as possible, whether it be with English support, French support, TA support, and whatnot? And I kind of just want to understand, say, for, you know, we're spending $35,000, which is the biggest portion of our budget, on a school coordinator. What is the value that we get out of that, in the same type of conversation we had about Sandrine last year? Thank you.
So I'm not going to get into like explaining the value of Katie's position as the coordinator. She does a whole ton of work. I'm not going to go into like explaining whether we want an art teacher or an orchestra person. TAs do benefit a lot of kids, but not every single classroom is going to get a TA. And that's just the fact. No matter, we don't have enough money, we don't raise enough money to have a TA in every single classroom. So whether we have 2 TAs or 3 TAs or 4 TAs, you're still not going to impact the entire classroom. Things such as Jacob PE program, that impacts all kids. Having a coordinator impacts all kids. Having orchestra, in fact, impacts all the upper grade students. So the things that we have, these are all valuable programs, and these are all valuable line items that affect a certain group of kids. Gate classes, we're a school for advanced studies. How can we claim to be a school for advanced studies if we don't offer anything above and beyond for our gifted and talented students? So again, these are all important. I don't want to get into discussion of like, well, let's take this money and move it to this and like nickel and dime these things. They're all very, very important things to have. And unfortunately, due to budget cuts, like I cannot fund all these things. So this is the position we're in.
But so my point being, though, if you're asking us as the parents to fund it, don't we have some position to be justified on why we're funding it and why we're making decisions in one way or the other?
We definitely value your feedback, but if you're going to say something like, you know, why are we paying for 3 TAs instead of 4 TAs, or why are we paying, you know, like these little nickel and dime conversations, it really doesn't get us, it really doesn't make any headway or any progress.
Well, and I mean, I will say that you elect us as your booster board to represent you in the conversation. And we had like a 2-hour meeting with Katie and Mr. G last week, and also had like our own separate board meeting where we went through a lot of these items and looked back historically at what we spent, and tried to be really thoughtful about a year that we have no idea what next year is going to look like, but tried to be really thoughtful about what ways we can show up as parents with our dollars, and support the things that will most need support. And in that conversation, you know, when we were talking about like, okay, we have no idea what next year's going to look like, you know, Mr. G, Katie, as the folks on the ground, what do you think will be most important? And without hesitation, they both immediately said personnel. And I think, you know, my perspective is that we aren't in that, we don't have that same lens. And I really, you know, I really trust that that's true. And I see that playing out day to day. So at least from my perspective, like we as a board did a lot of that due diligence before we brought this to you today. And we're happy to like answer all the questions you have and be transparent about how we made those decisions. But like, that's why I assure you that we did go line item by line item last week with Mr. G and Katie and talk through all of these things and that kind of thing. The other thing I want to say is that I do not believe it is boosters' role to weigh in on individual folks in these positions. Our job is to fund the position. So we're not talking about individual people. I just want to be really clear about that.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I just wanted to mention that we are, that also includes her benefits, that it's not just the salary.
Oh, right.
It is also the benefits of the position. So it's not, it is less money than it looks like on paper. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thanks. That's a really important point. Yeah, it's like retirement, health insurance, all that when we say benefits. Okay.
And we had also Danielle had typed in a question that might be easier also if Danielle, if you're here, if you can unmute yourself. And next after Danielle, I have Brad on the list. I know he raised his hand earlier.
Thanks. I was just wondering, you know, as we look at this year's budget, last year's budget, the year before, you know, everyone pretty much knew what to expect and you could pretty easily comp budgets. But as we look at next year, I think we're facing like a really unprecedented time. So just wanted to see, you know, I know we talk about like how important teachers are and how we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of teachers during giving campaign. We talk about, you know, like the value of using booster dollars to support teachers. So were teachers given an opportunity to brainstorm on this? And does this budget reflect whatever they think they may need? Because as we think about their new classrooms, whether it be hybrid, where they're trying to simultaneously teach or whatever that's going to look like, they're still going to be teaching online. They're going to have kids coming in on different days. The classroom's going to physically look different. So were teachers, you know, given an opportunity to brainstorm and think about what they may need as we approach a really bizarre year next year?
I mean, I don't know if Mr. G, you have feedback on that, but like it's usually like admin. I'm sure like they meet with the teachers and evaluate what's needed, and they're the one that are in direct contact with the teachers. And we're here, you know, to support what are the missing items to what the admin sees is the right, how do you say, vision or mission for the school, the trajectory it's going on.
Okay. So did the admin have a conversation with the teachers? I don't know. That was the answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went to get something, some budget items. So yes, we do talk about the teachers. The teachers are going to say they're going to want support in the classroom. So the teachers are going to say they're going to want TAs. The teachers are going to say they all want new laptops. They all want document cameras. They all want like actual equipment to use in the classroom. They're going to say, we don't necessarily care about orchestra because it takes away from instructional time. They're going to say, we don't necessarily care about an art teacher because that also takes away from our instructional time. Field trips and such, again, the teachers really want to teach. And when we offer the kids, we offer too many electives or too many things where they're being pulled out of the classroom or where they're missing classroom instructions, then the teachers tend to get upset by that. So their biggest concern is help in the classroom, having additional personnel, additional supervision on the playground, because otherwise they might have to do some of that and they don't want to do any of that. And then like laptops, because some of the teachers have really old devices and we cannot afford to give them new devices all the time. So we were able to replace like maybe 1 or 2 laptops a year, but you know, a lot of them have really old devices that they're using or they're using their own personal devices. So that's pretty much what teachers would prioritize. When it comes down to actual itinerant art teachers, when we meet to discuss, hey, do you want Miss McQueen? Do you want to have dance, drama, visual arts? Which one do you prefer? They do like Miss McQueen. that's a priority. They like to have usually visual arts because usually the visual arts teachers have been stronger than the dance teachers. 1 year we had a really good drama teacher, so they kind of go back and forth on that.
Okay. And I don't know if you had stepped away, but the beginning of my question was, you know, as we think about normal years, I guess we could call them normal years, I think like we all know what to expect. You know, as we think about next year, like the teachers are going to be in these classrooms and like who knows what that's going to look like. I've seen photos from friends on the East Coast where schools have reopened and like kids are sitting behind plexi and there's all these new needs. And, you know, they've realized new things that they need to effectively teach in their classroom, you know, whether that be like masks with see-through or, you know, like all these things that, you know, out of brainstorming, because at this point, that's all we could really have, you know, we're going to have these really interesting, unique needs next year. And that's why I just wanted to see if teachers were given an opportunity to kind of brainstorm and think about what those needs might be, knowing that next year is not going to look like February of last year when we left the classroom.
Yes, actually, Danielle, to that point, that's why we have an extra 15K in funds, because as you said, exactly, there's things we don't know. We don't know if kids are going to be able to use the classroom, the playground, for example. Are we gonna need to purchase some whatever recess equipment where kids can play individually? So, you know, as we've mentioned before, with admin's input and just you're kind of planning sort of in the unknown, you know, with the information we have today and assuming, you know, it is going to be in person next year. That's how this budget was basically put together. So, but that is why we saved money aside, you know, exactly for things that we don't know, like what the reality will impose.
I see Brad has his hand raised.
Hey, thanks, guys. I was curious, is there an avenue that we have to LAUSD to like bend some years? Because it's a little strange to me that they only flipped the bill for one TA. And I think like a little pressure campaign on our end or a little pipeline into somebody at LAUSD that we can bend an ear on every week and tell them what we're up against with the budget. Because it's kind of mind boggling that they only pay for one TA. And I feel like everything that we pay for, they get a pass on. You know, I feel that they should pay for orchestra, but we pay for orchestra, which is great. But I think it would be great to have some kind of pipeline from boosters to LAUSD that they know us. They know us well and they know our concerns and they hear them a lot. I think would be helpful. And I also think that if teachers need to kind of ruin their day because they have to watch kids on the playground, we should be pushing parents to spend an afternoon with the kids and watch the school grounds. I've done it. It's super fun and it's easy. And every parent should have to do it if their kid goes there. That's all.
Thanks, Brad. I really like the way you're thinking. Just to give you kind of how the district works. By contract, teachers are not required to do any supervision. That's in their UTLA contract, so that wouldn't happen regardless. But I think having parents volunteer, I know you volunteered quite a bit last year, you know, starting up football games with the kids and playing basketball with them. It is a lot of fun. You volunteered to open up to have our garden open on many occasions, and the kids love being in the garden. With regards to your point on the budget, because we're no longer Title I, we basically have 3 big budgets to work from, and pretty much the school, the district provides the facilities. They provide like, here's the campus, and they provide certain positions like a principal, office manager, office tech, plant manager, 1 day of psychologist, usually 1 day of nurse services. So there's certain things that the district provides, and then anything else above and beyond that falls on the school. So this year, because of COVID, in the general fund, we have a little bit of a surplus, which carries over to the next school year. So because of that, because Miss Anastasia in the office left us in December, and we did not fill that position, we got a certain amount of money of salary savings from her position. because Ponch quit, and we did not fill that position.
Punch quit.
He did quit. Yeah, Ponch has left us. Because teachers are working from home, they're not calling out sick. We have a little bit of bank. We did not use up as many sub days as we have in the past. So based on that little pocket of money, this carryover money, I was able to fund just about the entire coordinator position, minus 35,000 there. I was able to fund 1 TA, again, 2 supervision aides, copier costs, instructional materials, general supplies, and a couple other little things. But the district, that's the limit of it. The district will not give us any more money because it's just simply not there. I mean, even if every single person from every single school was constantly calling the district and asking for more money.
I hear you. I hear you, boss. I hear you. I just
Yeah.
think I don't take that for an answer. And I think we should still bend ears over there.
Okay.
And at least know people, invite them to school. Go have lunch with them. Have a booster lunch for them. I don't know. We should know them like they are, like we know you. That's how intimate I think we should know these people that have decision-making power for our school. And I don't know any of them.
But they can't give our school extra money for a TA.
I understand.
Give
I
extra money for
understand.
a TA across the entire LUSD, where there are lots of schools that are in much worse shape and less well served than we are. So
I mean,
unless we're going to go district wide and advocate for all the kids, which I love that idea. Like, yes, let's go district wide and advocate for all the kids, which is a version of what the teacher strike was doing. Like that's how they affected change. That's what it took to get 5-day nursing and librarians covered. It took the teacher strike. So I love the idea that as parents, we can like be scrappy and go knock on doors, but I'm not comfortable being part of a movement that's not advocating for all the kids across LAUSD personally. And I don't think that knowing people and having coffee with people is going to get us an extra TA. It feels like it's going to end up being wasted energy.
may I just suggest one thing? I mean, maybe as an idea, like if there are like parents that want to see if something more can be done, like a committee can be formed for those who have ideas on what ways, with relations with LUSD. I mean, I'm sure, like as Kate mentioned, LUSD is not just Richland, so definitely there's going to be limitations. But if there were to be channels, to improve those things at Richland, and that could be a gateway to improve things at many other schools, then maybe having a committee that has the time, and ideas on how to do that, maybe that's the way to go.
Just an idea, guys. That's all. It would be great to have that avenue open.
All right. Well, I like this direction where we're gonna change school funding for the state. I'm a fan of that. I want to make sure we answer the budget questions because it is 1:40. Let's see. I'm trying to scroll up in the chat and see if we-
I saw Carolina had a question, and Stephanie and Melissa. And then I have to look again, but I have those on my list: Carolina, Stephanie, and Melissa. And I have to scroll up to see what was the question.
My question was just about the middle school planning. We're talking about, we're not sure where that number came from. So is there going to be a consultant hired to help formulate a plan or anything like that to actually build a middle school, or where is that planning going to occur?
That's happening with myself and the local district administrators, local district operations, who then in turn take our information and they take it all the way down to Buhner's office and the main facilities to see if we can actually use that office space behind us, or if it's going to mean working with the actual classrooms that we have, or perhaps dropping in some additional bungalows onto our campus.
Okay, thanks.
And then Stephanie also had a question. I'm scrolling up to find the question.
Oh, about what grade the TAs are in?
Yes.
So we start young and then move them up. So ideally TK, K first, second. There's really usually aren't any more TAs beyond second grade. And that's pretty much kind of a district-wide thing. Usually by the end of second grade, third grade, the kids are reading. They're a lot more independent, so they don't really need as much support from a TA. Ideally, it'd be great if we could have them across, at all levels. But with benefits, it's approximately $25,000 per TA. That would require a lot of money that we don't have to have TAs in every single classroom. But we always start with the younger kids because they need more assistance, and then work our way up.
And then Melissa was asking, so I can read the question. There was a 13K increase in TA expense, but no, okay. But no,
I think you answer that in chat.
Okay.
Further down.
Okay, and then more comments, about, applying pressure, about how LAUSD funds the school. Okay. And then Danielle, I think, had another question as well, pertaining to French enrichment, I think.
Yeah, I was just wondering, as I look at the budget, if I didn't know that we were a French immersion school and just read through the budget, it doesn't really seem like there's anything French related there. So, are there opportunities to include additional enrichment? We talk about being a gifted and talented program and, offering the gate support. Are there opportunities along those same lines to offer additional French, especially as we think about next year, where there's some non-French students who haven't been in a French environment for what will be over a year? Is there anything we can provide to really just provide French enrichment?
Do you specifically have anything in mind?
For example, we used to have a French art teacher, which was fantastic. So the kids were getting art and then the additional French exposure at the same time. Knowing that it's unclear and probably unlikely that the art teacher from the district would be French. I think, anything, whether it be classes, if it was cooking, if it was some sort of activity, if it was, French music, if it was, learning more about various, countries that speak French, just anything to kind of immerse in the French culture a little more. As we think about the fact we are a French immersion, how do we
Did you cut out on me?
Did the call drop?
So the TAs are all French speaking. So we try to pretty much only recruit French speaking TAs. We want to get more French library books in the library, more resources. As we add sixth grade, we need more textbooks. We need things at grade level appropriate material in the library, in classroom, in the main school library, and in classroom libraries as well. At one point, we were offering after-school tutoring. If you recall, that was the Teacher X time. That was all from Title I funds, where we would pay teachers to stay after school and provide tutoring in language arts, math, and in French. That money is gone. So we really don't have a whole lot of money to pay teachers to do additional things. We offer after-school tutoring with the France Exchange. That's a great program. It is per fee, but it's $10 per hour. So I think it's a really good price. So as far as we would love to offer more, we would hope the district gives additional funding. That's things that we've asked for. We've asked for much like a magnet schools have a magnet coordinator. If the district would fund some sort of dual language coordinator, then that would free up our coordinator position to purchase additional things. But that's not the case. So that's kind of, we would love to have additional opportunities, but that still, it requires funding to pay people to teach it. If it's, we can bring in other things, but then it's at a per fee, then the parents have to pay for it. Or if you want us to do it, then we need to raise additional money. We have to additional money to pay for the teachers or the people who provide these activities in French.
Oh, sorry, my battery died. So now I'm jumping in on my screen. But yeah, so I think all of that makes sense. Just, as we look at the budget, there could be places that we could, make a trade-off on a line item, or as we look at those reserves, or, just looking at the items, as we think about the priorities. I didn't realize that France Exchange was $10 an hour. Last time I did the math, I thought it was much higher, but if it is $10 an hour, that's a great deal. But in any case, just as we think about, what are those opportunities? And, as I feel like someone pointed out in the chat today, recognizing, the socioeconomic status of some of the kids in the school, recognizing that not everyone has the money to pay for tutors and those supplements. I think the more that can be provided as just part of the French immersion curriculum, the better opportunity we're giving, with equity for all the students, instead of just those who can afford tutors and afford, additional enrichment classes.
Okay. I just finished scanning the chat, and I think that there's comments that we haven't necessarily voiced, but folks can read. I think that was the last question I saw. Yeah, Damien, we'll take a motion to approve the budget, and then we'll start the poll.
Awesome. I'll make a motion to approve the budget.
Okay, so.
I second.
Oh, thank you. We don't always I don't think we always follow those rules, but I like it. It feels very, very official. Okay, I'm launching the poll. So the question on the table is, do you approve this budget as presented? You get a yes, no, and I will share the results when everyone has a chance to vote.
Somebody had a last question before Sarah has a last question.
Well, Sarah will answer your question while folks are voting. Yes, I understand Mr. G will not vote. Thank you for that comment. Also, for the record, I can't vote because I'm logged in as Richland boosters.
Sarah, unmute yourself.
Oh, okay. Hi. I just wanted to know if, I saw right now a news report where they showed kids in a tent doing orchestra, and it didn't sit well for me, and I'm sure it won't sit well with a lot of other parents. If we have a budget where it says $26,000 is allocated for orchestra, but we don't necessarily want orchestra to look like that, would we be able to then, mid-year or in the beginning of the year to change that money and allocate that into something else, or we don't have that option?
First of all, orchestra will not look like that. Orchestra will be in the auditorium with the kids spaced apart, 6 feet apart. Usually when we do have orchestra, it's by different types of instruments, so like the violins, the woodwinds. So there's probably no more than maybe a dozen kids there at the max. And they'll be spaced apart. If there's more kids, then we'll have to make different little cohorts or groups. So it's not going to look like that. But no, once you fund the orchestra position and Booster writes a check for the 26,000 or 24, whatever the dollar amount is, and that gets given to the district, they go ahead and they purchase an orchestra teacher. So now an orchestra teacher knows, hey, I've got a job at Richland, or more likely hey, I'll be at Richland on Mondays, and I'll be at a different school on Tuesday, and another one on Wednesday, and another one and another one. But that person knows that their position is funded for the year. So you can't all of a sudden then change your mind saying we no longer want orchestra. That position is funded for the entire school year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the answer.
All right. So there are a few folks who haven't yet voted, so I will leave it open. I'm going to suggest, since we're running close on time, why don't we go ahead and have a couple other updates, and I'll leave this open for another 2 minutes or something. Does that sound okay, Soha?
Yes. Next on our agenda is Fran's workshop that's coming up on March 18. Let me just share the flyer here. Hold on. All right, and share screen. Okay. Fran, if you're here, could you please unmute yourself?
I just, I think Danielle did the flyer for me, and it's really self-explanatory. And I think it's really important, particularly right now, that we take a look not only at our children and what's going on with them with ourselves, because in this particular topic, anger is a learned behavior and how we handle it. And some kids act out like the picture shows and others keep it inward. And I was listening to all of you just before, and I didn't hear anybody bring up mental health services. And I know from my experience right now with the children that I'm doing some counseling and coaching with, there's a lot of issues around their mental health and related to not being with their classmates, and just the whole issue of not being in that room with the teacher who they connect with in a different way. And so I think we're going to have some of those issues next year when they are back. And I know from my experience with volunteering, running groups with Katie and Mr. G, that was a powerful way for kids to express some of the emotions they were feeling, and anger was one of the main. So I'm just, I encourage you to think in terms of how important their mental health is going to be, as well as their academic and physical health next year when they go back to school. And hopefully this kind of workshop would give you some information that may help you in that. So.
Thank you so much, friend. That is definitely a very helpful thing you're doing for the community to offer these amazing workshops. And are we still keeping the vote until the end? Should I continue through the?
But let's say this is last call. There's still five or six folks who
Yeah,
have.
we can keep it just right until, you know, if you want. You can move. The next item is, Christine, are you here? So we can talk about Rollathon?
Yes, hold on a second.
If you want to share your screen to show the Pledge Star website, you can do so.
Okay.
If you'd rather I stop.
This will stop at the, okay, continue, I think. Desktop, I'm guessing. Oh, sorry.
I like where the recipe.
My kids wanted to make a pie today. Okay, here we go. I can get rid of this too, I think. So if you go to pledgestar.com/Richland, you enter your email address and name, and then you get this screen. And so I just wanted to go through because a few people had questions on how to share it. So when you get in here, you can just click on these, and like I just have one child at Richland now. So you put in your any kids that are there. If you have more than one, you can add more. And then under pledge request, you can add a picture of them that will go out to your family and friends. And then you go to the add family and friends. And if you did jogathon or walkathon before, when I clicked on this, it brought in all the ones from years before. Hopefully it will. If not, you can always add them. And then you just add the people down below that you want to add. And when you're adding them, it'll ask you like, how do you call them? So when the email goes to them, it will say like, dear grandma or dear Aunt Sue or whoever. And then this is the one somebody was asking about on Facebook. They couldn't figure out where to do that. So if you go to the share on social media one, you just click on that. You can either go straight to Facebook, or you can always click here and that'll copy the link, and then you can post it on wherever you want to post it. Let's see, I think that was about it. You can check your progress, and the prize is the first 50 kids to enter. Oh, your family and friends can give you encouraging things there. The first 50 families that or kids that register will get a Carvel gift certificate. We have a few of them left, and so I'll be asking Mr. G to give those out on Monday at the assembly. So if you want your kid's name called at the assembly to get their ice cream, make sure you do it soon, because we have 50 to give out and we're getting close to that. So make sure you go to pledgestar.com/Richland and do that. If you know of any companies that want to donate money and have their name on the banner outside the school, give them my information is crmckee, MCKEE @hotmail.com, and I can give them the information for that. And it's going to be on April 17th. the Sunday before, we're going to do a bike swap. So if you have kids that have a bike they've outgrown, they can bring it and then see if there's another bike someone else has brought that will fit them better. And then the day of the roll-a-thon, we will have, we'll be going around the neighborhood on your bikes or your scooters or your skaters, or you can walk if you don't want to roll. And anyway, so make sure you register your kid with 10 family or friends put in under the section that says add family or friends so that they get their Carvel certificate. Does anyone have any questions? I don't know if I've explained it well enough or what.
I do. It's Jen Dumonso. I just quickly, didn't hear it said it at the beginning, Christine. If we, Emil's been at the school many years, so am I setting up a new account? When you go into it, it seems to say, have you already registered or have you not?
Everybody will, let me see here if I, hold on, let me move this.
Because it seems to be when you go to the account, it's like the first screen
There
says.
you go. This will be your first page. And so everybody is going to go.
Okay, whether you've done it
Even
years
if you
past.
did walkathon other years,
Got it.
click the top one, not registered, and then you'll put all that information in.
And I'm putting my name in that stuff or my
You
child's
put
name?
your name. And
Okay,
then
great.
once you're logged in, it'll ask for your participants. So then that's when you put in your kids.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
And Christine, I think I started doing it for Sophie. Once you're like in, there's an opportunity to import the contacts from a previous event. So yeah, you're registering for a new event, but you don't have to like re-put in grandma's email. You can.
Right. When I clicked that button, all the people that I sent it to in the past years, they all popped up.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
I mean, you could take people off if you want or add more, but then I didn't have to. And you can also, when you're doing it, put in their email address or their phone. So it'll either email them or text them, depending on what you input.
Cool. So we are almost at time. We want to have Danielle share her information on my side.
Sure thing. I don't know if you have the flyer there in the packet. If not, same flyers you guys have seen for the past several months. We're several months in and the Bright Bike Parade is still going strong. But we have an update in terms of the day. We're now going to be doing it on Saturdays. So it makes it a little easier for people that are getting out of work on Friday and, want to get over to the bike ride. And then also from a traffic perspective, now that there are some additional people working in offices, Friday, weekday traffic, we thought Saturdays might alleviate some of that traffic and make it just that much safer. So we will be out biking on Saturdays. So hope you can join us this Saturday and most Saturdays thereafter.
Mr. G, we'd like to see you there.
I will try. It is far, but I will try.
Actually, I think the Saturday might help. Like, at least I don't live super close to the school either. And it being on Saturday definitely makes it easier for me to like come over to that side of town and not be too worried about my toddler staying up too late. Okay. So I'm going to end the poll. Looks like
I'll stop sharing. Okay.
And then I'll share the results. So the yays have it, 36 voted yes, 5 no. Thank you all so much for your participation in that process. I know that like there's difficult decisions and not everyone agrees, and that is okay. But we really appreciate the questions. We're over on time, and so we're just gonna say that the other items on the agenda for today are covered in the packet. So like Pamela didn't get to go through the financials in detail, sorry. But that is all included in your packets. You can review that and information on STAR, that's all there. We'll send out a recording. But thanks again for showing up today and engaging in these really important conversations. And at least for me, it was really a hopeful thing to be thinking about funding our school when we're all back together in person next year. And so hopefully that was a little bit hopeful for you all too. And with that, I think we can adjourn.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Stop the recording.